Pilots don't usually look like you, sweetie. Are you lost? She stood there, silent. Her uniform was neatly pressed, pilot wings gleaming on the left side of her chest under the lights of Denver International. He didn't smile, didn't look unsure. Just said it like it was the most natural thing in the world. No one around spoke up. No one stepped in. Surrounded by cold glances at the reception counter, the black woman stood still, denied entry to a space meant for people just like her. Then, without a word, she reached into her pocket and pulled out her phone. No yelling, no arguing, just one call. And from that moment, the system began to crack. I'm sorry, but employees are not allowed inside this lounge. Please wait outside. The words hit like a slap. Captain Taryn Brooks didn't move. Her uniform was sharp, her pilot wings catching the overhead light. The staff member hadn't even looked at her badge. He had simply looked at her face and assumed. That feeling Taryn knew too well. Mistaken for a flight attendant. Ignored stepping off the flight deck. But today was different. Today, she wasn't just walking into a lounge. She was walking straight into the heart of a reckoning. Taryn had dreamed of flying since she was a little girl, standing barefoot in the dry Alabama grass, watching silver jets cut clean lines through the summer sky. The planes seemed like magic, distant and untouchable. No one in the cockpit ever looked like her, but she still imagined herself there, hands steady on the yoke, eyes forward, commanding the sky. Her world was small, but her dreams stretched far beyond it. People around her didn't mean to be cruel. They just didn't believe. You should aim for something more realistic, her guidance counselor said with a smile that closed doors without ever slamming them. Neighbors called her ambitious like it was a warning. Even the flight school receptionist had raised an eyebrow when she came to inquire, not about classes but about enrolling as a pilot. But Taryn didn't fold. She scrubbed motel bathrooms at dawn and worked double shifts at a diner, pouring coffee for men in uniform who never once imagined she'd wear wings of her own. She studied until her eyes blurred, failed check rides, got up, tried again. She outlasted the disbelief, outlearned the doubt, outworked the silence. She'd earned her way to the front of the cockpit, line by line, hour by hour. And even after becoming a captain at Stratus One Airways, she never let herself believe the fight was over. Because for people like her, being in the room wasn't enough. You had to prove again and again that you belonged there. And now, inside Denver International, with that same uniform hugging her shoulders, she was being told to wait outside. Like none of it had ever mattered. I'm an employee, she said, her tone calm. Calmer than it had any right to be. I'm Captain Taryn Brooks. I have a flight in 2 hours. The staffer paused, just for a second. He looked at her badge, really looked, and then up at the sharp crease of her collar, the wings pinned just above her heart. His face didn't shift much, but something passed behind his eyes. Recognition, regret, or just the calculation of someone realizing they might have overstepped. Still, he didn't apologize. Well, captains usually check in at the main office, he said, tone clipped. This area's for crew members. Taryn exhaled, slow and silent. Her pulse didn't spike. Her jaw didn't move. But inside, the familiar tightness returned. The measured restraint of someone who'd had to stay composed in rooms that didn't want her there. She'd watched 2 white male pilots in the exact same uniform walk through moments ago. No questions. No barriers. No double takes. But she didn't argue. Not yet. Because there was power in silence. And she knew when to hold it. A second set of footsteps interrupted. Another man approached, clipboard in hand, pressed shirt, a silver badge reading supervisor. He didn't ask for clarification, didn't listen. Look, ma'am, we have policies, he said, already escalating. If you're causing a disturbance, I'll have to ask security to escort you out. Taryn looked at him, really looked. And for a brief moment, her silence wasn't just calm. It was loaded. There it was. The word they always reached for when they needed to reassert control. Disturbance. A single word that flipped the blame without raising a voice. A word that turned calm into threat. And right then, they had no interest in hearing explanations. Taryn hadn't done anything. She hadn't shouted, hadn't stepped out of line, hadn't broken a single policy. All she had done was stand there, in uniform with wings she had earned, asking to be recognized as who she was. But that was enough. Enough to make the room nervous. Enough to make men with name tags reach for policy manuals they hadn't quoted 5 minutes earlier. The supervisor stood firm, not out of strength but routine. He didn't see her as a captain. He saw someone challenging an order, someone occupying space he didn't believe she deserved. It wasn't hostility, it was habit. And all around her, people watched. Gate agents froze mid-conversation. Crew members who'd once smiled gave her cautious glances before looking away. The lounge had gone still, like the air had thickened. No one spoke, but everyone knew something was about to shift. She could have fought back with facts. She had hundreds of flight hours, commendations, leadership roles. But Taryn didn't waste breath. She'd learned a long time ago, when you know who you are, you don't argue with people who don't. She slipped her hand into her jacket pocket and pulled out her phone. No sigh, no eye roll, no raised voice. "Hello, Mr. Reynolds. This is Captain Brooks. I need you to come to the lounge now." She didn't elaborate. She didn't need to, because power, when real, doesn't have to announce itself. It just arrives. It didn't take long. The click of polished shoes on tile echoed down the corridor. Heads turned. Conversations halted mid-sentence. The lounge, moments ago thick with judgment and tension, now filled with a quiet kind of dread. Richard Reynolds, CEO of Stratus One Airways, walked in without a word. He didn't stride, he arrived. Eyes sharp, posture crisp, every movement efficient and direct. The man didn't belong in a terminal. He belonged in boardrooms, in press releases, behind podiums announcing multi-billion-dollar expansions. Yet here he was, summoned not by a crisis of equipment or finance, but by a pilot, by Captain Taryn Brooks. His eyes scanned the room. The moment he saw her standing in uniform, still and composed, facing 2 flustered employees, everything slowed. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't need to. The room told him everything. The receptionist stammered first. "Mr. Reynolds, there was a misunderstanding, sir." He lifted one hand, palm out. Silence. No, there wasn't. His voice wasn't loud. It didn't have to be. He turned to Taryn. "Captain Brooks," he said, voice cool but grounded with respect. "I sincerely apologize for what just occurred here. This is unacceptable." And just like that, the entire room shifted. Faces turned pale. Crew members who had looked away now watched her like they were seeing her for the first time. The supervisor adjusted his stance, his clipboard suddenly a burden. What none of them knew, what they had never even considered, was that Taryn wasn't just another name on a roster. She had worked with Reynolds directly, helping shape Stratus One's diversity and inclusion initiatives. She'd advised the executive board. She had influence not through ego, but through earned respect. Reynolds didn't hesitate. He turned to the 2 employees. "You're both suspended, effective immediately. This company does not tolerate discrimination toward passengers or staff." Then he faced the room. "This lounge is closed. We're shutting it down for immediate retraining and reform. This will not happen again." Taryn didn't gloat, didn't smile. She simply nodded. Because it wasn't about being right. It was about being seen, and making sure no one like her ever had to be unseen again. It started with 1 phone camera. A passenger seated nearby had recorded everything. The confrontation, the tension, the moment the CO arrived, and the quiet way Taryn took control without ever raising her voice. The video went online within the hour. And by morning, it had millions of views. People didn't just watch, they reacted. Comment sections flooded with outrage, with support, with disbelief that a pilot, a captain, could be treated that way in uniform on duty. But the most powerful reactions came from those who saw themselves in her. Black women, first-generation students, young girls with quiet dreams they'd never dared to say out loud. For them, this wasn't just a viral moment. It was a mirror and a door. News outlets picked up the story. Stratus One's name trended for days. The video sparked conversations in flight schools, airline boardrooms, and morning classrooms alike. And while some tried to minimize the incident, most didn't. Because there it was on full display how bias doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers from behind a desk. Other airlines took notice. Some reviewed their internal protocols. Others reached out directly to Captain Brooks, asking for consultation on reforming their diversity training programs. Her quiet resistance had cracked something open. But Taryn didn't claim victory. She didn't want the spotlight. What she wanted was change. And more importantly, she wanted to ensure the next black girl who walked into a lounge wearing wings would be seen, respected, and welcomed without question. Weeks later, she was invited to speak at a leadership summit. She wore her uniform. She walked onto that stage not just as a pilot, but as a presence. The room quieted. She didn't raise her voice then either. She simply said, "I didn't dismantle anything. I just made the system look at itself." And for the first time, it didn't look away. She was still. She was unbothered. She was present. And across the country, something shifted. Not because she demanded it, but because she had reminded them, gently, firmly, unmistakably, that she belonged. And now, so did everyone who came after her. Some stories end with applause, others with silence. But this ended with a quiet kind of power. Because Taryn Brooks didn't just correct a moment. She redirected a mindset. And in doing so, she didn't just open a door for herself. She opened it wide enough for everyone who had ever stood outside it, wondering if they'd ever be let in. She didn't just walk through. She left it open, so no one else would have to knock.